Greetings, and welcome back to the MCOC Encyclopedia. Today we'll be covering Path 2 of the Crucible. This will be the Red Goblin and the Darkhawk path if you're doing it on normal difficulty, or the downwards Red Goblin path only if you're doing it on legendary difficulty. It is highly advised that you plan out these runs carefully, as you can only use each champion once. If you get to a fight where you need a certain champion, but you've already used them, tough, you cannot reuse them. In the description I will link a very good planning spreadsheet put together by Simula, and also the full Crucible guide put together by Misty K, a fantastic graphic putting together the full teams from a lot of different content creators. And with that, let's jump in. First up on the Red Goblin path is Red Goblin. He has Burnout, Unlimited Power, and Time to Strike. Now, we could actually go into detail about what's going on, but he's got unlimited power, which just means we can Ronin cheese the hell out of this guy. For every debuff that gets put on him, after the timer goes round, he gains a Fury, and these stack and stack and stack. So, very soon, if you just go parry, 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 you'll just be able to stun lock him straight away. If you don't have a Ronin, then we will actually have to look at the other nodes, but even a 4-star I'm pretty sure would go through this just fine. Just get that SIG up. I used a 5-star on my actual run. Burnout will give the defender a charge every time they throw a special attack, and an additional charge for every hit on that special that you dex. Each charge increases the special attack damage by 10%. However, once they get to 10 charges, they are passively power locked for 10 seconds. Combine this with Time to Strike, which will degen the opponent when they would get power when they are power locked, and you can see how these two are meant to work together. You can use many champions to take this. Tigra's a good option if you're good with her, Scarlet Witch, Mordo, Dragon Man, Chavez, and so on. But just Ronin cheese it. There's no need to try and be clever here. Second, we have Ultron Prime, or Labtron as he's sometimes known. He has Armoured Assault, Boost Buff Armour Up, Gifted, Mystic Ward, and Transducer. Essentially, Ultron has increased chances to proc his armour ups, and when he does, he gains 65% attack, and goes passively unblockable. You can't really nullify any of these either, though Transducer will give us additional power. All we need to do here is either play around an unblockable Ultron, which isn't a big deal, or find some way that isn't nullify to remove all of his armours. I use Null, as his mediums will strip off armour buffs, and he works very, very well. Don't forget about Ultron's natural evade and poison. I've seen a fair few people use Serpent or Odin as well for this fight. Number 3 is Taskmaster, and this guy is a roadblock, but luckily he's only number 3. He has Aggressive, which does what you'd think it would do, Unblockable Specials, which does what you'd think it would do, but also Stymied Defences, which means we can't evade or auto-block his attacks, and he'll bypass all of our armour and resistance, Bob and Weave, which means all of his attacks are guaranteed crits, though this is disabled for 10 seconds if you intercept or dex one of his attacks, but most importantly, crit me with your best shot. This guy will take no damage, except from critical hits. So, you need someone with pretty much guaranteed critical hits. The top options here are Bullseye, Hitmonkey, or, who I used, Mantis. Very high crit rate champions, such as Adam Warlock, Cosmic Ghost Rider at a push, but he's not great against Taskmaster, or Stark Spidey, also work very nicely here. Up next, we have Immortal Hulk. He has Do Not Go Gentle, Ebb and Flow Heavy, High Energy Diet, and Aggressive. Aggressive does what you'd think it would do, and High Energy Diet means that they have 99% energy resistance and will pretty much instantly heal any energy damage they would take. Additionally, Hulk will be gaining power, not rapidly, but also not slowly, anytime he's inflicted with an Incinerate, Shock, or Cold Snap debuff. Ebb and Flow Heavy means that he will take 60% reduced damage until you knock him down with a heavy, but then you will gain a 30% crit damage passive for 12 seconds. This will then go on cooldown, and you've got to heavy him again to repeat. The main node here, though, is Do Not Go Gentle, and if you are not comfortable with this is the global in 6.2.5, and I would recommend you go practice there. For every 5 hits on your combo meter, you will gain a charge. If you try and knock them out, whilst you have those charges, they will instead rapidly burst on you, dealing huge amounts of damage each. Intercepting will remove 2 charges, which tags nicely in with Aggressive, and knocking him down with a Heavy, which tags into Ebb and Flow Heavy, will remove 1 charge. Personally, I used Black Cat for this fight, but really didn't like her very much because she's got a 7-hit combo and can rapidly build her charges. Though pretty much any other skill should work absolutely fine. Other people have used Killmonger, She-Elf, Hawkeye, Blade, Crossbones, Zemo, even Gwenpool or Mole Man, Nick Fury. They should all work fine. Nick Fury would be extra fine because as long as you can stay in your first life, you can completely ignore Do Not Go Gentle because you can just let them all explode and go into your second life. No worries at all. What you can do is bring whoever you want to counter Hulk, completely ignore Do Not Go Gentle and die, then grab a 20% revive when they're on 1 health and just hit them once. Be careful though, this is Hulk, make sure he won't go immortal. Up next we have Cosmic Ghost Rider. He has steady build up unblockable, Special Burst Lockdown 3, Rise to Power, Power Bond, and Energize. Energize will increase the power Cosmic Ghost Rider gains from being hit by 50%, and Power Bond means that draining abilities, such as Doctor Doom Special 1, are 90% less effective. Finally, Rise to Power means that when the defender is knocked down, a 4-second timer starts, and whilst that's active, each time the defender hits you or your block, they will gain 50% of a bar of power, so do watch out for that. The 2 other nodes are steady build up unblockable, which means once you have 3 or more debuffs on you, the defender will be fully unblockable until you have no debuffs on you. Combine this with Special Burst Lockdown, which means whenever Cosmic Ghost Rider throws a special, he will inflict you with an armor break and a heal block, and you have to be very careful to not let his damnations go all the way around, as in he gains 5 of them on you, otherwise you'll have a fully unblockable Cosmic Ghost Rider to deal with. Outside of that, he's not too difficult, and really any good Mystic can take him. I used White Tiger, even though you can't bleed him, but Destroyer, Sasquatch, Werewolf, Absman, Tigra, Chavez, they'd all work just fine. Up next, we have Old Man Logan. He has Lazarus, Arrogance, Lionheart, Bubble Shield, and Return Policy 3. Return Policy 3 means anytime you nullify one of his buffs, he will gain 60% of a bar of power, so don't do that. Bubble Shield will mean every time you block an attack you gain a charge, and once you get to 10, their next attack is a guaranteed unblockable. Lionheart means that you cannot reduce or reverse Old Man Logan's healing, otherwise it will instead gain a massive boost, and you will take 200% of their attack as direct damage over 5 seconds, so don't do that. The 2 more dangerous nodes are Arrogance and Lazarus. Arrogance means for every 10 hits on your combo meter, you will be inflicted with a Falter passive for 3 seconds. And Lazarus means that when Old Man Logan should die, he doesn't, and will instead regenerate to 20% health. This will happen 5 times. However, if you go across 20 hits on your combo meter, so 20, 40, 60, he will lose a charge, but if you lose your combo, he will gain one. There isn't that much to this fight. Bring a good miss counter and you'll be fine. I used Omega Sentinel and she worked amazingly, but Prowler would do well as well. Or don't. It doesn't really matter. There isn't much to him as long as you just sort of keep hitting him and watch out for Arrogance every now and again. Count your combo carefully and even that won't be too much of an issue. Up next we have Spiderham. He has steady build-up Fury, Stung Once Twice Shy, the best defense, and shifting immunity, bleed, and poison. Steady build-up Fury means that if there are 3 or more debuffs on you, the defender, Spiderham, will gain a Fury passive of 150% until you have no debuffs on you at all. However, if you purify a debuff, you will gain a 100% Fury for 10 seconds, so Purify champions can be very fun here. Stung Once Twice Shy means that whenever you gain a bar of power, you gain a Power Sting for 6 seconds. Shifting immunity, bleed, and poison just means for 10 seconds he is bleed immune, then the next 10 seconds he's poison immune, then bleed immune, then poison immune, and so on. Finally, the best defense means that he has a 60% increased chance to evade an auto block, and if he does so, he will gain 30% of a bar of power. There are 2 ways to play this fight. Either you are concerned with the debuffs, or you are concerned with the evade. There are a few champions that can deal with both, but we'll have a look at those in a second. If you are concerned with the evade, play very carefully around the Stung Once Twice Shy node, and try and throw your specials as soon as you cross a bar of power. You will either give him charges and take popper damage, or you will take the node Power Sting damage, and that one is significantly less. I used Kate Bishop and just threw my special one as soon as I got it, which did trigger the node sting damage, but it really isn't too bad, and I would rather that than give him charges. Given I was using Kate, and this was a Cold Snap arrow, he now can't evade, so we're good to go. The other option is that you play very carefully around his evade and throw your specials as soon as you can, but you shrug off as much as possible. Using champions like Kingpin or Atuma, Nick Fury, Crossbones and so on means you can gain a massive attack boost from the node. Finally, if you have her, Elsa Bloodstone can do both because she can inflict cold snaps once he's evaded once, but can also shrug off for another very good option. Up next, we have Stark Enhanced Spider-Man. He has Aggression Fury, Mixmaster, Be Like Water, Heavy Assault, and Stymied Defences. Stymied Defences I think we've seen before, which means you can't evade or auto-block, and their attacks will ignore your armour and resistances. Heavy Assault means both champions will gain a 500% increase in their attack values when using a heavy attack, and only the defender's heavy attack will go unstoppable while doing so. Be Like Water means whenever you inflict the defender with a non-damaging debuff, they will go unblockable for 8 seconds. Mixmaster means when you attempt the same basic attack twice in a row, so light, they will have a 100% chance to evade you. And finally, Aggression Fury will give Starky a very large Fury passive every 2 seconds. However, hitting him will reset this timer and remove 1 Fury off him. Personally, for this fight, I used Venom because Starky can't evade, and the only non-damaging debuff we're really going to be worrying about is either the armor break off my heavy or parry. But if you just play like he's stun immune, then there's no issues with that at all. Any of the evade counters from the previous fight would also work fine as well. Up next, we have Stealth Suit Spider-Man. He has No Hit Mercy, Evasive Meshes, Tenacity, True Focus, and Foresight. Foresight we like to see. Whenever we intercept, we get a big fury. That's it. Very nice. True Focus means that he can't be evaded or miss. And Tenacity means there is a 75% chance whenever we inflict him with a debuff that he will instantly purify it. Evasive Measures means whenever we knock him down, he will gain an evade chance, giving him a 100% evade chance. And finally, No Hit Mercy means if you knock him down, he will gain a massive crit damage buff, and can now crit through block. However, he's metal, so I used a 5-star Magneto, 1 special 3, and that was the end of that. There are many other options you could use, just watch out for his evade, or try not to knock him down too much. Negasonic Teenage Warhead, Venom again, if you didn't use him for the fight before, Onslaught, Moleman, Bishop, Stormex, Toad, they'd all work just fine. Up next, we have Doctor Strange, and I think this is the fight that the most people have used the same champion for. He has Ionized Armour, Ironclad, Heavy-Handed, Prey on the Weak, and Special Chaos Inversion. Special Chaos reverses your controls during his special attacks only, and Prey on the Weak means whenever one of your buffs are nullified or expires, Doctor Strange will gain 5% of a bar of power. Heavy-Handed will increase the damage of his special 1 and 2 based on his armour rating, and Ionized Armour will give Doctor Strange an indefinite armour up buff after each of his specials. The annoying node here though is Ironclad. When the defender is struck, they deal 20% of the damage they took back to the attacker for each armour up they have. I know a lot of people used America Chavez here. If you can get up some of her third dimension, he is never going to throw a special attack. Just be careful though that he does have a natural armour up phase, so try to minimise hitting him during that mode. If you don't have a Chavez to use, then I would say either anyone that can control his power well, or keep the armour up buffs off him will do very well. Luke Cage, for example, is very good at controlling his power, as is the leader, but someone like Doctor Doom can just strip any armour buffs off him that he gains, so you'll have no issues there. Up next, we have Symbiote Supreme. He has Ebb and Flow Knockdown, Steady Perseverance, Feats of Power, and Ability Power Rate Alteration Immune, which might be the title for the longest node name. Ebb and Flow Knockdown means that the defender will take 60% less damage, but knocking them down will remove that protection and give you a 40% fury for 12 seconds. This then goes back on cooldown, and the protection comes back. Steady Perseverance means that when the defender throws a special attack, they gain a stun immunity buff for 8 seconds, plus 2 seconds for each unique buff on the defender. Feats of Power will give Symbiote Supreme a Fury buff when he's above 1 bar of power, a crit buff when he's above 2, and if he makes it all the way to 3 bars of power, he gains a Cruelty buff. There isn't much to this fight, he's just sort of a big Sim Supreme that you need to knock down on occasion. I used Spider-Punk, and he did a pretty good job there, but pretty much half the Mystic class could take this fight no issues. Torch, Photon, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Red Guardian, Titania, they'd all do just fine here. Up next, we have Sorcerer Supreme. She has steady build-up Unblockable, Spite, Staggering Beauty, and Unblockable special attacks. Unblockable special attacks does what it says on the tin, and Staggering Beauty will put stagger debuffs on you whilst you are close to the defender. Spite means that any buffs you have, even just one, is enough to trigger a small power gain on the opponent. It's small, 18% of a bar of power per second. And finally, steady build-up Unblockable means whilst there are 3 or more debuffs on you, the defender will become fully unblockable. But if you purify any of them, you will go unblockable for 7 seconds. In this fight, you either want to deal with the steady build-up, or just make sure you don't have any buffs or many buffs on you at all. I found that most of the issues would come from her spamming special attacks, which would place lots of debuffs on me, so I chose Void for this fight to just constantly reverse her power gain, and reverse any spike power gain if I did trigger the Dex buff. This way she threw many fewer specials, which meant I didn't have to worry about other nodes as much. Spidey 99 would do basically the same thing, as would Sandman, but the other options you just go for raw damage, and you go for someone like Hulk or Titania or Quicksilver, they'd all do great here as well. Or someone that can block unblockables, like Kushala, they'd all work just fine. Up next we have Warlock. He has Ebb and Flow Heavy, Red Lining, Stage Fright, Bubble Shield, and Specialist. Specialist means your Special 2 will do 50% more damage, but your other 2 specials will do 50% less damage, so we're looking for someone with a good Special 2. Bubble Shield, we've seen before, it'll reduce your block proficiency for each blocked hit, and after 10, their next hit is a guaranteed unblockable. And Stage Fright means if you use a special attack, a harmless timer starts. However, if you use another special attack during that time, you'll be inflicted with passive direct damage, dealing 50% of your current health over 4 seconds, so don't throw too many specials. Ebb and Flow Heavy, we've seen before, 60% protection, knock them down, you gain a cruelty, for 12 seconds. This then goes back on cooldown, and then it repeats. For this fight, I used Gladiator. He has very easy access to heavies, and his special 2 does some pretty good damage. Other champions I've seen people use: Serpent, Gallon, Deathless King Groot's very popular, Medusa to shut him down, or maybe Hulkling. Pretty much any big cosmic will do a pretty good job of this fight. Up next, we have Elsa Bloodstone. She has Persistent Pressure, Buff Synthesis Fury Precision, Evasive Maneuvers, and Tenacity. Persistent Pressure means that while she is unstoppable, she is also stun immune. Every 15 seconds she'll go unstoppable for 5 seconds, but this is reduced by half a second for each prowess buff or passive you have. Buff Synthesis Fury Precision means if you have a Fury and you trigger a Precision, both buffs are consumed to grant an indefinite prowess buff. If you have a Precision and trigger a Fury, it does not work. Evasive Measures means every time you knock her down, she'll gain an evade charge. Remember though, this is Elsa Bloodstone, so if she evades you, she will then counterattack into you and probably take a combo. And finally, Tenacity gives her a 75% chance to purify any debuffs that come her way. For this fight I used Sauron, but I know a lot of other people use Toad or Bishop. Those are very good counters for this fight. Kitty can probably take it as well. Be careful and watch out for her Unstoppable if you aren't using a champion that naturally has high amounts of prowess. Up next, we have Cable, and this guy is quite annoying. He has Surge Protector, Supercharge, Gifted Ability Accuracy 5, Vigorous Assault, and Aggressive. Aggressive does what it says on the tin, and Vigorous Assault will mean he will be unblockable whilst he has a regen buff on him. Now remember, Cable has a chance to trigger regen and power gain whenever he crosses a bar of power, and thanks to Gifted Ability Accuracy, he has 200% increased ability accuracy, meaning that he's going to be proccing both of those a lot, which means he's going to be unblockable a lot. Supercharge gives him even more power gain to worry about, and Surge Protector means whenever you hit him, he gains a charge. For every charge he has when he throws a special attack, which he'll be doing a lot of, and there's a good chance they'll be unblockable, it will consume all of those charges, and for each charge consumed, he'll be refunded 10% of the power consumed per charge. meaning if he has 8 charges, he'll gain 80% of the power back, and he's probably unblockable, and he's regenerating, and he's gaining power like a madman. There are 2 ways you can go looking at this fight. Either someone with some serious buff control and power control, like Dr. Doom, or someone that can block unblockables. I went for the second one and used Iron Man. He is an absolute tank, and I ended up taking 2 special 3s from Cable, so maybe not the most optimal if you don't have a stacked Iron Man, but he does work very well. Hulkbuster and his potent power control will also do a very good job in this fight. Up next, we have Kang. This fight is another complicated one, but the rundown of it is he has 4 phases. In the first 3 phases, there are a few things that are basically the same. Kang will have a counter directly above him, either 0, 1, 2, or 3. All you need to do is throw the corresponding special attack, or, when the timer goes all the way around, be in that power range. So if it says 0, you want to be between 0 and 0.999 bars of power. If it's 1, you want to be between 1 and 1.99 bars of power, and so on. You can throw the special attack at any time. So if it just goes on to 2, and you have a special 2 ready to go, just throw it, and that'll tick off that one. It will also show you what the next one is going to be, so you can use that to plan. Kang's special 1 is now 3 beams that sort of go zap, zap, zap. In roughly that rhythm. I'd recommend practicing a lot in 7.3.6 before going into this fight. Whenever you dex the beams on his special, you will gain a chunk of power, and whenever you block them, you will lose power. So you can use his special 1 to help you get to the required specials. First time, just do that a few, and then he'll be stunned like the Grandmaster, you can beat him up. Phase 2, you will gain significantly more power. So you will gain a huge amount of power from dexing the beams, and you will lose not as much from blocking them. But it's exactly the same. Phase 3 is the same, except your power is slowly being trained, you gain much less power from dexing the beams, and you lose much more from blocking them, so it's harder to get to those higher ones. The 4th phase is when he has about 2% health left, and all you've got to do is throw a special 3 before he does. He will just rush to his special 3, and you will gain power as well whilst you are close to him. He is constantly gaining power, you will gain power when you are nearby. If you throw your special 3, you can try and knock him out, but if he gets to his special 3 first, he will certainly knock you out. The easiest way to get around this phase is just make sure you have a striker. If you launch your striker when he's at 2.5 bars of power, you are guaranteed to be able to get to your 3 bars of power as long as you've been matching him close enough. This fight isn't the most difficult, but make sure you have a decent counter available. If you want to use someone like Hyperion, that have their own inbuilt power gain, that can also make the final phase much easier as well. Practice in 7.3.6 a lot before going in for this fight. If you are running this on normal difficulty, this is where the path ends and the Darkhawk path starts. If you're running this on legendary difficulty, we're halfway through. Up next, we have Darkhawk. He has Special Connoisseur, Buff Synthesis Fury Precision, Subterfuge Block, Immunity to Armor Break, and Aggressive. Aggressive and Immunity to Armor Break do what you'd expect them to, and Buff Synthesis Fury and Precision we've just covered. Whilst you have a Fury, and then you gain a crit buff, you will then gain an indefinite prowess. Special Connoisseur means the defender takes 90% less damage from anything that isn't a special, that has an active prowess effect on it. And finally, Subterfuge Block allows you to gain a small Fury buff whenever you block an attack. So really, you can take this fight with pretty much anyone, as long as you block, dex, block, dex, block, dex to build up those prowess, and then just go for a big special. Personally, I used Angela, but there's nothing wrong with using Hercules or Gamora or Cat Murdoch, even use OG Daredevil. You can use pretty much anyone for this fight you'd like. Up next, we have Ultron. He has One-Armed Bandit, Make a Stand, the best defense, Immunity to Armor Break, and Return Policy 5. Immunity to Armor Break does what it says on the tin and stops you using Magneto here. Return Policy 5 means that anytime you nullify one of the defender's buffs or armor break them, they will gain 100% of a bar of power, so don't do that. Make a Stand means that he has an indefinite protection of 90%, though this will go on cooldown if you knock him down. The best defense gives him a 60% increased ability accuracy for evade and auto blocks, but will also grant him 30% of a bar of power if he triggers it. One-Armed Bandit is an interesting node, which has a lot of text. Every 8 seconds, Ultron will cycle through a dormant Fury, Armour Up, or Power Gain buff, and whenever you knock them down, they activate that buff for 30 seconds. Whenever they have 3 buffs of the same type, so 3 Furies, 3 Armours, 3 Power Gains, all buffs from this node are removed, and Ultron will take a burst of damage proportional to that. But this node basically does nothing. The Furies aren't particularly big, the Armours aren't particularly big, and the Power Gains aren't particularly big either. So if you knock him down when he's not in the Power Gain phase, you'll never have to worry about the Power Gain. And your trigger make a stand. So he's just a big Ultron, really. I used Hulkling, you could use pretty much anyone here. Fintech even used Killmonger, and Ultron's bleed immune. You can use pretty much any champion you want here. He's a big Ultron, that's about it. Up next we have Guillotine 2099. She has Thunderstruck 2, Shock Vulnerability, Blood in the Water, High Voltage, and Composite Construction. Composite Construction means that all tech champions in this fight are immune to ability accuracy modification, and that includes you, though it doesn't really matter here. High Voltage means each time a tech attacker inflicts a power drain, burn, or lock on the defender, they will also inflict a small shock. And Shock Vulnerability means shocks will increase our damage by 200%, so it's really good to have them in this fight. Blood in the Water means whilst you are suffering from a debuff, the attacker will gain a 100% Fury. And finally, Thunderstruck means that your shocks and passives will do 25% more damage, but the defender will take 90% less damage unless they are suffering from a shock. Personally, I used Shuri here. She was amazing. Just knock Gilly down at the start so you don't have to worry about her going invisible, and then you can just do Shuri things. But any champion with access to shock should be fine. Black Widow Deadly Origin, Nebula, Hulkbuster, so on, all work fine. Up next, we have Crossbones. He has Galvanized, Foresight, Rust and Ruin, From My Cold Dead Hands, and Live Wire. Live Wire means both attacker and defender have a 20% chance to apply a shock debuff over 10 seconds whenever they hit their opponent, so you will be applying shocks to Crossbones whether you want to or not. Rust and Ruin means that whenever you hit the defender, you have a 40% chance of being armor broken, and if you get enough of these, they become permanent. Galvanize means that every 15 seconds, Crossbones will change between charge up and overcharge phase. Whilst in the charge up phase, hitting his block will put big shock debuffs on you, and whilst in his overcharge phase, he will go unblockable. Finally, we have Foresight, which we love to see, intercept for big damage, and From My Cold Dead Hands, meaning whenever you nullify, stagger, or fate seal one of his buffs, you take a nice big burst of direct damage. I used Havoc here because his, all the shocks drive Havoc absolutely crazy, and all of his, energy resistance, very, very effective for this fight. I've seen OG Storm used to great effect as well. She likes shock debuffs being put on her, and if Crossbones tries to shrug off any of your stuns, which he will, you will replace them with passives instead. Any champion that doesn't mind being shocked or is shock immune will work here just fine. I've seen Hulkling do it, I've seen Onslaught do it as well. Up next we have Sabertooth. He has Adrenochrome, Powerful, Indomitable, Immunity to Bleed, and Special 1 Reluctance. Special 1 Reluctance makes him less likely to throw Special 1, and Immunity to Bleed does what you'd expect it to. Indomitable means that we can't reverse any of Sabertooth's healing, and Powerful means that we can't manipulate his power at all. This leaves Adrenochrome, which means whenever the defender, so Sabertooth, throws a special attack, they gain a 1000% Fury for 20 seconds. This Fury starts paused and is unpaused after the special attack had finished. But for every debuff on the defender when they activate the special, the duration is reduced by 4 seconds, down to a minimum of just 1 second. When the Fury expires, the defender takes a burst of damage. So this fight is stick a whole bunch of debuffs onto Sabertooth, and that's about it. I used my other Omega Sentinel, and she did amazingly, but I've seen a lot of other people use Null, Werewolf by Night, Deathless Guillotine, Lady Deathstrike, someone even used Howard the Duck, all perfectly valid options. Up next, we have Yellowjacket. He has Combo Party, Encroaching Stun, Flux Dispersal, Energize 2, and Heavy Assault. Heavy Assault we've seen before, big special attacks from both of you, but only his are unstoppable. Energize 2 will increase how much power he gains by 100% just by hitting him. Flux Dispersal means that every time you hit him, he will gain a charge, and each charge on him reduces your attack by 5%. So 20 charges and you deal no damage. Heavy him to remove all of those. Combo party means every time you cross a multiple of 10 on your combo meter, you gain a small crit damage buff. But if you ever get hit, you lose all of them, and you take a burst of damage proportional to the number lost. And finally, encroaching stun. Every 20 seconds, you will be stunned for 3 seconds, unless you're performing your special as the timer goes round. You don't really need anything super special in this fight. I used Chi-Ilth, though any good skill champ should do fine. Chi-Ilth, Nick Fury, Mole Man, Zemo, Mantis, even Hercules, they'd all do just fine here. Up next we have Mangog. He has Staggering Beauty, Fight or Flight, Unstoppable Force, Boost Buff Unstoppable, and Steady Perseverance. Staggering Beauty will place stagger debuffs on you when you're close to him, and they'll fall off when you're far away, and Steady Perseverance means that he will go stun immune anytime he activates a special attack for 4 seconds, plus an additional 2 seconds for each of the defender's unique buffs. Fight or Flight means that every 12 seconds, if you are close to the defender, they will go unstoppable for 4, and if you are far away, you will go unstoppable instead. Unstoppable Force means the duration of your unstoppables are increased by 100%, and you gain a 140% passive fury whilst you are unstoppable, and Boost Buff Unstoppable gives an extra 75% duration to his unstoppables. Effectively, this is just a big Mangog. There's lots of words going on, and he'll go stun immune after special attacks. But that's kind of it. Watch the timer for Fight or Flight and make sure you're nice and far away. Personally, I used Titania here, and she was absolutely fine for it, though any champion with slow can also work okay. I've seen some people say that She-Hulk is great, and some people say that she's not so good, so up to you if you want to use her. As I said, I used Titania, she was absolutely fine. I've seen others use Red Guardian or the Overseer, Spot, all seem to work just fine. It's a big Mangog, and watch out for the Unstoppables. Up next we have King Groot. He has Apex Predators, Tough as Nails, Power Build-Up 3, Special 1 Reluctance, and Supercharge. Power Build-Up 3 will give him prowess whenever he's above 2 bars of power, and Special 1 Reluctance we've just seen, he's less likely to throw his Special 1. Supercharge means that every 15 seconds he will gain a power gain buff, but the important notes here are Tough as Nails and Apex Predators. Every 3 seconds, Tough as Nails will give the defender a permanent armor up buff, but when you strike him, this timer is reset. Apex Predators means every 30 seconds, all buffs on both champions are nullified, and the champion with the most buffs, nullified this way, gains a massive Fury passive, and an unblockable passive, both lasting for 10 seconds. When the Fury expires, this is restarted. Best thing I found to do here is use Longshot. Now you might be saying, well, Longshot doesn't have any buffs, which you are correct, but what you can do is throw your Special 2 to remove all of King Groot's buffs, and then Dex, wait for the timer to go round, and then you gain the 500% Fury. And a 500% Fury on a Longshot Special 2 will put a very large dent in this man. Other mystics that can do this are Spider-Man Supreme. I've seen some very good things out of him, as well as Diablo, Wiccan, Kushala. They all work fine. Or you go down the other path of stacking lots of buffs yourself and use someone like Adam, Hulkling, or Gore. Up next, we have Purgatory, and she has Hubris, Power to Cower, and Immunity to Shock. Now, Immunity to Shock does what you'd expect it to, and Power to Cower means that for every hit on your combo meter, she will gain an extra 0.5% power rate, and her specials will cost 0.5% less. You can reset your own combo meter with a Special 3. The problem in this fight comes from Hubris. She will take 90% less damage, but whilst she is throwing a special attack, any damage she would take during that special attack, she takes 350% of as well. This counts for any damage she takes when she throws the special attack. So power stings count here, which means champions like Cassie Lang, Spiderham, or Scorpion do very, very well. I use Torch in pre-fight, he works amazingly, because you're also doing lots of damage to her whilst she is throwing the special attack. Up next, we have Annihilus. He has Odometer, Parry Vulnerability, Boost Buff Unstoppable, and Immovable Object. Odometer is a weird nose, but it goes between 0 and 200. As you dash forward and backwards, it will go up, but if you are knocked down by a special attack, it will be reset. Whilst the odometer is above 100, the defender will go unblockable, and you will gain a fury increasing your attack value based on the odometer's value. So it's up to you. Do you want to push it high and gain the fury, but have to deal with an unblockable Annihilus, or try and keep it low and not? You also have parry vulnerability, which will give you a big fury buff whenever you parry, and increase the damage you deal to them whilst they're stunned by parry. Boost buff Unstoppable increases the duration of the defender's unstoppables. And finally, Immovable Object means that for every 5 hits on your combo meter, you'll gain a Steadfast buff, allowing you to block 1 unblockable hit. Personally, I used Absorbing Man in Magma form for this fight, and he ended it in 1 special 2. It was absolutely crazy. He is probably the top option for this fight, but other big mystics such as Sim Supreme, Tigra, Man-Thing, Sasquatch, Doom, they'll all work just fine as well. Use that parry vulnerability to your advantage to get lots of big damage in without having to dash around a lot. Up next we have Mojo. He has Oscillate, No Surrender, Subterfuge Block, and Bubble Shield. This is a weird fight because you kind of want to play it as badly as possible versus a Mojo. A lot of the time when you're up against Mojo, you want to avoid triggering buffs whilst he's got his anti-life field so you don't get degened, but as we'll see, that might not be the way to go in this fight. Oscillate means the defender, Mojo, will flip between a very, very aggressive and high damage mode and a very defensive and tanky mode. Subterfuge Block means that whenever you parry, you gain a small fury buff, and Bubble Shield, as we have seen before, will reduce your block proficiency for each blocked hit. After 10, their next attack is a guaranteed unblockable, and then it resets. The key node in this fight, and why I think you should play it as badly as possible, is No Surrender. You, the attacker, gain 90% degen resistance, though this is reduced for each full bar of power you have. When you knock down the defender, any degens on you are transferred onto them, and they will deal 1000% damage. So what you can do in this fight is just stay at very, very low power, purposefully trigger his anti-life field, then parry, which will instantly turn that fury buff into a degen on you, and then knock Mojo down. This way you can put very, very large degen passives onto Mojo, and just melt him via his own degens. Personally for this fight, I just used Hulk and actually just out-damaged him, went to special 3 and stunlock, but I know a lot of people use Spiderham with his inbuilt degen resistance. I have seen a few people use Titania and avoid buffs completely, go down that route. Silk is another popular option, as is Mr. Negative, because when awakened he can actually regenerate whilst degenning, so double win there. Up next, we have Super Skrull. He has Bullet Time, Steady Perseverance 3, Feats of Power, and Stun Vulnerability. Stun Vulnerability means you'll deal 200% more damage whilst he's stunned, though Steady Perseverance makes this more difficult. Whenever they throw a special attack, he will go stun immune for 8 seconds, plus 2 additional seconds for every unique buff on him. Super Skrull already has quite a few unique buffs, and with Feats of Power giving him an additional Fury when above 1 bar of power, Precision when above 2 bars of power, and Cruelty if he gets to 3 bars of power, that is a lot of time he is going to be spending stun immune. To make that even more annoying, we have Bullet Time. Whenever you would try and parry stun him, you won't, and instead you will give him an evade charge. Attacking into him whilst he has an evade charge will let him evade. However, if you dex him whilst he has these evade charges and they do stack, he will then be stunned for 1.5 seconds per charge. For this fight, I used Kushala, and she did a pretty good job of it. That stun immunity that he gets off his special attack is a buff, which means we can nullify it with her special 1, though due to his immunity we can't then turn it into Incinerates. Other people have used strong mystics like America Chavez, Sorcerer Supreme, Rintra, Symbiote Supreme, Werewolf, and so on, though you can actually cheese this fight if you have a big Immortal Hulk. Just parry, 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 dex. When you have lots of time built up, I'd say at least you want at least 10 on there, and then you just go medium, 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 and your burst damage will get so high you can nuke this guy down pretty quickly. I still think the Mystic option's a bit safer, but if you've got a big eye Hulk, not a bad option. Up next, we have Killmonger. He has Extinction Protocol, Power Shield, No Hit Mercy, Enhanced Parry Armor Break, and Redoubled Determination. Extinction Protocol will give Killmonger more attack based on how much power he has, and each time he throws a special attack, he will gain increased combat power rate for the rest of the fight. So, one to try and keep short. Power Shield, we know and love. Big specials, but reduce damage everywhere else, or no damage everywhere else. No Hit Mercy, we've seen before. Knock them down, they gain a big Cruelty passive, which also lets them crit through block. Cruelty buff, sorry. And Enhanced Armor Break is a slightly newer node, but basically whenever you parry, you will Armor Break Killmonger. Now this is quite important because Armor Breaking Killmonger shuts off most of his abilities. However, we do have to keep an eye on Redoubled Determination. For each debuff on Killmonger, he will gain 65% attack and 20% combat power rate, with bleed, poison and armor breaks counting for twice that. So naturally I went straight for the champion that has the most armor breaks I could think of, which is Cosmic Ghost Rider. This was a risky move because Redoubled Determination and Cosmic Ghost Rider is a very interesting combo because of all of the debuffs he applies. However, if you can get to your Damnation or Power Lock, you don't have to worry about it for a short duration. If you're a decent Cosmic Ghost Rider player, he can work very, very well. For some other options, Negasonic Teenage Warhead is a pretty much perfect Killmonger counter, with Northstar doing very good as well. If you've got a big OG Thor, he likes armor breaks as well, so he can work, and I have seen other people use Mr. Sinister, Domino, and Onslaught. Up next, we have Mr. Negative. He has Playing Favourites, Energy Adoption Fire, Special Burst Lockdown 3, and Picture of Health. Picture of Health just means we can't change his regeneration rate at all, and Special Burst Lockdown 3 means whenever he activates a special attack, it will inflict us with an armor break and a heal block debuff. Energy Adoption Fire means whenever you strike him, there is a 50% chance he'll be incinerated. However, if you can bleed him, this won't happen. If you inflict him with an incinerator of your own, he will take no damage from it and actually regenerate 1% of his max health per second until that incinerate expires. Playing Favourites is a slightly odd node, but essentially Mr. Negative will choose light, medium, or heavy attack. Depending on which one he chooses, that attack will gain 100% attack rating and ability accuracy, but the other ones will have minus 100% ability accuracy and 100% attack rating. Whenever either champion throws a special, he will cycle and choose a new one. Personally, I used Kingpin for this fight, and he absolutely crushed it. He just shrugged off basically everything that was an issue, and that worked very, very well. I've seen quite a few people use Onslaught for this guy, because the Incinerate will ramp up Onslaught very quickly, but do be careful using Onslaught, as if you go to Special 2 and inflict your degens, Mr. Negative's signature ability will let him heal from those degens, and he will take reduced degen potency. Your other option is to use a strong bleeder, such as someone like Chi-Ilth or Baron Zemo, so you don't have to worry about Energy Adoption Fire at all. Up next, and the penultimate fight on the path, we have Namor. He has Crisis of Opportunity, Biohazard, Powerful from Afar, and Aggressive. Aggressive does what you'd expect it to, and Powerful from Afar will give him a power gain buff whenever you are out of striking distance, but when you move into striking distance, it will go away. Biohazard means you have a 20% chance to be bled whenever you hit him normally, and a 50% chance to be poisoned when you hit his block. Finally, Crisis of Opportunity means every 20 seconds you will be inflicted with a degen passive dealing a moderate amount of damage over 6 seconds. If the timer expires though, whilst you're performing a special attack, instead of being degenerated, you will gain a pretty chunky Fury passive. If the timer expires while Namor is performing a special attack though, you will be degenerated and he gains the Fury passive. For this fight, you really just need someone that can deal with Biohazard and make sure you throw special attacks at the right moment. Personally, I used Nimrod, he worked very, very well, but I've seen a lot of other people use Warlock, Omega Red, Onslaught, Mr. Sinister, Photon, Sauron, Omega Sentinel, so on and so forth. And now for the last fight on the path, Superior Kang. This guy is another one of those big, complicated fights, and I won't be delving into it in detail here. Know that I used Ultron for this fight, because a lot of the time you've got to be dealing with lots of energy damage, and Ultron regenerates a lot of it. I know Serpent is another fairly popular option here, as is Venom, Vox, Cersei, Deathless King Groot, Juggernaut, and Gore are all very, very good options here. Practice a lot in 7.4.6, and I would recommend you 100% that quest before you come anywhere near this guy. So, there we have it. We have now covered every single fight in the Crucible, for both the normal and the legendary difficulty. Remember, if you're doing the normal one, you can reuse champions in the second half of this, whereas if you're doing the legendary difficulty, you can't. You have to do it all in one go. As per the Q&A, things will be a little bit slower over September, but that doesn't mean I still don't have a few things in the works. I have an Angela video that I should hopefully be putting out soon, and if I have time for it, the Hulkbuster showcase should be coming out soonish as well. Do let me know how your runs are going down in the comments, and if you have any questions, please do put them down there as well. Please consider joining the Discord server, a great place to get specific advice, make suggestions for future video topics, and, while I'm awake, I do my best to be there as much as possible. Thank you, and I will see you next time.